Jacqui. I'm going to do a quick introduction for Jacqui. So I'm Bridget. I was on the session yesterday if you weren't with us, but I'm going to introduce Jacqui now, and she's going to take you through today's session. So Jacqui, a seasoned nurse, has evolved into advocating an innovative approach to wellness while establishing a charitable hospital, Heart Place Hospital, to serve the community. Jacqui's journey from bedside nurse to transformative leader has her championing mental and spiritual health, refining perspectives on menstruation, sexuality, motherhood, and menopause, and challenging the stigma associated with the aging process. Her work repowers humans, particularly women, through healthcare and societal reform. Heart Place Hospital has become a beacon of hope and healing for the community, particularly for those in the caring roles who have reached their limits. The absence of government funding has not hindered Heart Place Hospital's ability to provide charity care and benefits for everybody. Welcome, Jacqui. Thank you. And
Thanks,
I'll pass it over to
Bridget.
you.
Thanks, everyone. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Just to a
And just while Jacqui's getting her screen up, just share that if you've got any questions or you've got anything, any concerns or got anything you want to fire at us on Friday, then just put it in the Facebook or in the is there a messenger chat as well for it? I'm not sure. So if there is, just throw it in those and we can either come back to you on Facebook throughout the week or have a discussion about it on Friday. Are you good, Jacqui? Is it not sharing? Oh, do you want, is it because I'm co-host? It shared beautifully just before we came on. So this is what we get sometimes with technical issues. Yesterday I couldn't share mine either, but then I fluked it at the end and got it shared. So but Jacqui had it shared just a moment ago. Jacqui, you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself?
yeah. Let me just take you and co-host you and just see if that makes a difference.
Okay, because I wasn't co-host before we did that, was I?
So is everybody. Yeah, there you go. Right, take two.
It'll work. Magic.
Yeah.
Magic of menopause.
Right, there.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I just ask everybody to stay on mute while Jacqui speaks.
How are we looking? All good?
Beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, we love that. So I just pulled a couple of cards before we came on, and one of them was elegance. And this seems to be a word I've pulled like the majority of this year. And it's certainly not something that I would generally call myself, but I'm having to surrender to it, which was the second card that I pulled was surrender. And I also pulled the card Inanna, which is super interesting because she features in today's presentation. So I want to segue from where Bridget left us off yesterday in the Joy Challenge. And I'm just really curious to see if anyone has created some space to find where they find joy. This challenge actually came up for me a couple of months ago when I had a visit at a Heart Place Hospital, and they were telling me that they weren't experiencing any joy and so they'd actually gone and accessed some HRT, and that they were finding that they were experiencing joy again. And they were able to meet up with girlfriends and have drinks. And this is where I sat and I thought, oh gosh, maybe I need to do this. This is really interesting. And I sat with it for a few days, and I really discovered that no longer brings me joy. And I started writing down what does bring me joy. And so my response to your challenge, Bridget, is that I discovered that it was what was time in nature was bringing me joy. And it was experiencing exactly what we're doing here, having these conversations. Something else that really got me curious too was I was experiencing what I would imagine as a social anxiety. But again, I realized it was actually that it was a space that I wasn't experiencing joy, having small talk, but having conversations like this bring me joy. So I really wanted to acknowledge your challenge and invite everyone, if they haven't already, to look into that challenge. I just wanted to share, I haven't actually met Bridget in real life, but we've seen each other in real life. We're both Zach Bush fangirls. And I remember seeing Bridget across the room when we met Zach in real life last year. And I just also want to do a shout out and say that I have done her Remembering course, and I absolutely recommend it. It really opened my eyes up further to what I've already experienced with listening and reading to what Zach is sharing. So thank you so much, Bridget, for yesterday. So, magical menopause. My passion lies with the metaphysical, the magical, and spiritual, although there is no hiding from the physical. So metamorphosis of menopause. I thought this was a really good name for many reasons, and it'll get interweaved throughout this conversation. So it's not an aging process. I know it's not an aging process. Instead, it's an evolution advantage, and it affects everyone. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to interweave some stories throughout this talk that include men in my life. So my husband's very much involved in Heart Place Hospital, and I would say he's kind of, I feel like there's sort of three sort of processes that we go through in this metamorphosis, or more, but three that I can think of that he's going through. So like a discovery or an awakening, a discovery, and then a transformation. So I feel like he's in that discovery phase. Also, other men in my life, I have my business mentor is a male, and he is the general manager of women's health for the entire Te Whare Ora of New Zealand. So and I don't hide the way I speak to him. I also have, and we spoke about it, coincidentally or synchronicity will happen this morning, running into Sarah on the beach on her way to see Craig after seeing my podcast with Craig. So also Craig is also supporting me through my metamorphosis. And then on my board, the board of trustees for Heart Place Hospital, there's two males on that too. So I really want to emphasize that menopause is not just for us, it's for everybody. Now, it's only killer whales and humans that go through menopause, which I see as an advantage to humanity, having women caring for people in their tribe rather than reproducing. We'll come back to the killer whale as well. So I'm a storyteller, and I can't help but think that The Wizard of Oz was written about menopause. The scarecrow wishing he had brains, the Tin Woodman who longed for a heart, and the cowardly lion seeking for courage, and of course Dorothy wanting to go home. But we can't forget the Theodora the Wicked Witch and her fire abilities that were melted with pure water, which I think is beautiful synchronicity to your talk yesterday, Bridget, and thank you for actually mentioning her yesterday, so a great segue in synchronicity. And then, of course, Glinda, the Good Witch, who is compassionate, benevolent, and fiercely protective of people. So my story is of one of hot mess on the Hot Mess Express to the Hot Healed Success and repeat. So it wasn't one trip around, there were several trips around. My remembering of menopause with my mum was at 15, about 14 or 15 years old. I worked at a rest home as a nurse aide. So it must have been 14 or 15 because I didn't have a driver's license. And my mum had me at 25, so she would have been about 40. And we were Catholic raised, so we didn't speak about these sort of things. It was all very hidden and taboo. And she said to me that she'd missed her period and she thought she was pregnant. And my knowing of my menstruation was the absence and presence of my period. That's all. So that the present of it, I'm not pregnant. The absence of it, I'm pregnant. And then other than that, I pretty much knew how to manage my period. And that was all my knowing. I had a very big void around that rite of passage. And so I have this remembering of my mum at 40 thinking she was pregnant. I never associated that to any like rite of passage or next stage at all. My other remembering of menopause is again with my mum, and it's again at the same rest home. I'd party hard, and I'd got home at 3 a.m, and I'd got up at 7, and I worked as a nurse aide a kilometre up the road. I drove my Datsun Cherry up the road, probably still hammered, and worked all day with the amazing ageing population. And I would come home and my mum would say, "You've worked all day, go and hop into bed. You need to go and have a sleep because you're going back out again tonight." And so I'd be like, "Oh, she's the best." And so I would like cruise into that duvet and I would just about be having that sleep. And then she would fling the door open and she would say to me, "Get up and vacuum. You do nothing around this house." And I was just like, what the actual fuck? Like, so I literally had Theodora and Glinda come into my room at that point. The only other sort of remembering I have is my mum being on the phone to girlfriends and saying things like, "Oh yeah, she's having a nervous breakdown." So I'd never really heard or been exposed to menopause. I remember being about in my 20s or 30s and watching an Oprah show, and she talked about this thing called menopause, and she put up a couple of herbs that she suggested to take, and I remember writing them down in my journal thinking, right, when I get to this place, when I get to menopause, I'm going to take those herbs and I'm going to be absolutely fine. So unfortunately, that's not how my journey has happened for me. So albeit that I've experienced some hot flushes and some heat at nighttime and some waking at nighttime, mine hasn't been so much in the physical. Mine's been more than the metaphysical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. So like I said before, I feel like we have this like awakening, discovery, and transformation phases. So just a little note, I am known to be quite confrontational with my language. I think I probably got a bit of Martin Luther King in me, but I just want to encourage you either to put your Harry Potter cloak on and let it slip off and not take it personally, because really where it's coming from is that our world is selling us products to make us feel to look less tired instead of providing the support to help us be less tired. So I just wanted to put that note out there. So my menarche, or my start to my menstruation journey, was full of shame. And like I said, it was the knowledge of the absence and presence of my period. I went to an all-girls school. We never told each other that we had our periods. We'd put our tampons up our sleeves, and we would secretly go and sort out our bleeding. The similar thing happened with my sexuality, my rite of passage of sexuality. I really, although there must have been some innate wisdom that came through in there, because I didn't ever take any hormonal contraception. I actually chose to do the fertility awareness method, or natural family planning, which I don't even know where that came from. So it must have been an innate wisdom for me. Motherhood, again, really interesting rite of passage. And I remember having my first child by emergency section. And because I was a nurse, the midwives came in to me and said, "Oh, we're really busy today. Can you fend for yourself?" So not only had I laboured all night and then had abdominal surgery and had a catheter, which was like a rugby ball size full of urine, I was then left to fend for myself. And it's now that I look back on those times that I realise I just didn't have a voice. I didn't know how to advocate for myself at all. And so the work that I do at Heart Place Hospital is around supporting those in the front line to really understand why they're going into these roles, and to start healing these boundary wounds that we've experiencing, to advocate for ourselves and others. So fast forward to 37 years old, and this is where I've had my first, what I know now to be my first menopausal symptom. So 13 years ago. And I started bleeding really heavily. So I remember one time putting a super tampon in, like the super thickest railway track pad on, a pair of jeans, driving a kilometre up the road, meeting friends at the bar, and sitting down and bleeding all the way through. And them having to mop up what I'd left behind, and me to walk sideways out of the bar to go home and have a shower and tidy myself up. So I did what I only knew best to do, was to go to my GP, and I was put onto a medication to help thin the lining of my uterus so that the bleeding would be reduced. I knew no different. This didn't work for 3 or 4 months. And so I started doing my own research, and I really couldn't find much. Certainly nothing ever came up about being estrogen dominant or progesterone light or anything like that. Nothing came up for me. And so I found the Mirena. So I had, I'm pretty slick. I was working at a hospital, and I asked, because they were $1,000 at the time, and I asked one of the doctors, if I can get a Mirena, can you put it in? And so I was able to get a free Mirena. Unfortunately for my husband, the week before, I'd also got him a free vasectomy. So we were double bagged in that sense, but it was a bit rough on him. So all was well for about 5 years. And then at 42 years young, I had what I call my Mac truck moment. And still no one said anything about menopause. So for me, my Mac truck showed up with anxiety, panic attacks, agoraphobia, claustrophobia, anorexia. And so I was nursing. I was a nurse manager at the time, supporting nurses all around New Zealand, and I worked with health psychologists. So I asked for their support, and looking back now, like it just never came up. And I know now, like, menopause and perimenopause has only just really become a topic in the last few years. So 8 years ago is kind of before my time. And it was through that experience, and I literally was rocking in the corner. And I remember thinking, I just want off this moving ball of energy. I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to feel what I was feeling. And so I accessed the support, and that was really huge. When you ask the support, it's really freaking massive to ask for support. And so I accessed the support, and I was actually really disappointed. I experienced what I now know to be backdraft. So we dug into some really big wounds, and the hour was up, and I was off and sitting in my car, really just mopping up all that pus that was coming out. So I went, so in that kind of stillness, in that void, actually my whispers returned, because my kitty prior to that was I was a runner. I drank alcohol. I was busy, really, really busy. I was a perfectionist and I was a people pleaser. And I wasn't able to access any of those adaptations of what were parts of me, amazing parts of my awe-inspiring body that were supporting me to survive from the wounds that I had experienced. So I made a decision in that void, and well, I didn't really. It was the whispers returned, and they said to me, "Care for the carer." And at the time, I thought, sweet, easy as, a few pedicures and some happy thoughts, it'll be all good. And so I started following the breadcrumbs, and some of the breadcrumbs are really big. And this is where the magic comes in, is like I actually resigned from my job. It was the first time I'd ever resigned from a job, and I didn't have a job to go to, I didn't have a baby to have, or I didn't have I wasn't going on my OE. So it was really massive decision for me. And I was seeing a life coach at the time, and she said to me, and this really landed, and I'd never experienced this. She said, "You're replaceable." And I thought, it's like, I was gutted. And then I thought about it, and I thought, from her lens, I thought, she's right. I totally am replaceable. And so I resigned from that job. It was massive. I was the main earner in our family, and we had 2 little girls at the time. And it felt great. It felt liberating. It felt amazing. I felt like I got some energy back. I felt really excited. And literally the next day I went out to my letterbox, and there was a forgotten superannuation that I'd had in my 20s and $31,000. So the whole stress of the financial stress was taken off by this magic and miracle. And I can share so many of these magic and miracles now, so many. And I remember one of my magical mentors, Dr. Lissa Rankin, she would say to us, it takes surrender, it takes trust and faith. And if you don't have it, you can have some of mine. I've got plenty to go. And this is what I say now to people at Heart Place Hospital, visitors that come to Heart Place Hospital. If you don't have any, you can have some of mine, because I've got an abundance of it. Fast forward, my healing journey kind of continued, and it was really, I'm going to show a really cool image soon, but it was really took quite a few layers for me. So first of all, I started with workshops in my lounge for nurses and midwives and doctors and parents, and they were called Replenish, Recharge, Reconnect. And then it morphed into workshops for young women. I thought, wouldn't it be amazing if we'd learnt this information earlier? So that was called Be Beautiful, which I've since renamed to Priestess School. And again, that was my innate wisdom coming through, because I'd never sat in a circle myself as a woman. So I was creating these circles. Then just the week before the pandemic hit, I was in a space, and a younger woman than me was sharing with us how she'd been to Red School. And Red School is a school, online school, all about the menstrual cycle. And within an hour, she shared with us around the menstrual cycle, and my jaw just dropped. I was just like, what the actual? And by now I'm 46. I was 46 years young. I've been menstruating for 33 years. I'd been a nurse for 25 years. And there was something that I was learning that I'd never, ever learned before. And I think the reason that it blew my mind so much and that my mouth was so wide open was that I had that it was a knowing, that I knew that it was something so familiar to me. And I couldn't believe that I'd been through all those cycles thinking I was literally crazy. So during that first lockdown, I got every book I could get on the menstrual cycle and I read it. And if you want to know my favorites, I can share the book list with you. And I thought, like I have done every other time I've had a discovery or an awakening, I thought, I've got to share this with other people. I've just got to share this. And so once again, I created a workshop that was in my lounge, and I called it the Nurse Jacqui Mother-Daughter Empowered Period Workshop. Not sure why I made it so long. And I probably delivered about 100 of those workshops. And during one of our other lockdowns, I also invited 5 other women throughout New Zealand who I trained in that workshop, and they started delivering them, but the lockdowns didn't sustain that. So you can see, like, I'm just kind of breaking down I'm unlearning and starting to remember. And then 2 years ago, and menopause kept coming up. Like, the mothers would come to these workshops and they'd be like, what about menopause? And pretty much all I could say was, oh, we follow the moon. We follow the moon. That's what we do. We follow the moon. And then a mum came to one of my workshops and she said, oh, Jacqui, you will absolutely love Jane Catherine Severn. You've got to get her book. I've just helped her write her book. And so I contacted her and I bought her book and I read it and I bloody loved it. And I still to this day cannot believe that Oprah Winfrey has not found this book and on her book club. It is phenomenal. This woman is phenomenal. And so I contacted her and I invited her to create a workshop called Pause for Menopause. So I started that 2 years ago. And I love now looking back, making sense of everything makes sense. And you'll see in other workshops that I've created, I didn't necessarily know or remember all this information, but I knew the people that had. So I knew that I could co-create, I could collaborate with them, with my zone of genius and their zone of genius, and we could deliver this to more and more people. So, Pause for Menopause started, and last year I also flew out Jane Catherine from Christchurch, so she lives here in New Zealand, and we had our first charity event for Heart Place Hospital. It was a full room. It was a winter's night. I think we had 50 women, 1 man, my husband was there. And Jane Catherine blew everybody's mind. So I am going to share with you a lot that Jane Catherine has shared with me, and I want to give her full credit, a lot of credit for this. Along the way, I also dived into sacred sexuality. So actually the sacredness and sex magic of our sexuality. So once again, I found a guru. I found someone with a zone of genius, and I co-created with Meg Williams, and we delivered Sacred Nectar to over 100 people. So basically, you're kind of getting the gist of my untethering and then my liberating, healing my boundary wounds and starting to find my voice and advocate for myself and for others, and just how important I just felt it was that we shared this with others. So basically, you name it, I did it. So I was fortunate to be on the PhD or participant of a PhD here in New Zealand. This is really, it's so exciting, like in New Zealand, this is happening in New Zealand. So the PhD, and she's doing her PhD in the Goddess Code. So I was one of the participants in that for 6 months. I've also got a friend who's a medical doctor, and she's about to start her PhD in the Priestess Physician Codes. And if you listen to any of my podcasts, I've done a podcast with a beautiful nurse who has created a place called Hecate, which is after goddess Hecate, goddess of the moon. And Hecate is very magical. She's very full of witchcraft and goddess of the moon. So literally in Dunedin, we've got this place for supporting our menstrual cycle and all our archetypes called Hecate. So it is really exciting times. Another goddess that I love talking about when it comes to our archetypes as women, our rites of passage is Inanna, and I can't believe I pulled her this morning. So she is the goddess of love, fertility, and war. She's the goddess of heaven. So yeah. So Jane Catherine. So Jane Catherine, she was amazing. So 2 years ago, she would say to me, Jacqui, I totally recommend Menopause. It's a genius teacher, it's a magician, and it's an alchemist. And she said, you're moving from when we're in our menstrual cycle archetype or our motherhood, we're in our apprentice years. And when we move into our menopause, we're in our alchemist years. And I thought, oh, that does sound exciting. And it's full of energy, and it actually has our best interest at heart. And she always talks about how our female hormones do not create the problem, but they reveal the problems. And boy, did they with me. There was no hiding. So yeah, Jane Catherine really supported me to see this rite of passage with affection and admiration. What I loved about her, it was very similar to me. I couldn't find anything. Like, I was being invited to lots of podcasts and lots of webinars, and I was listening to reading books, and I couldn't find anything that was about the magic of menopause. It was all very much disordered or diseased. And in fact, at times when I'd hear some of what people go through with menopause, I thought, wow, if I was a dog, I'd have to put me down. Like, I just don't know if I can cope with all that. So she's been a real beacon of light for me, a real lighthouse for me. And she is very generous and knows that she has to pass the beacon on as she goes through her crone years. So how she started was she actually picked up a book when she was 25, and it referred to that women's cycles match the moon, and that totally landed for her. And that normal doesn't include being a woman. And she searched, like me, she searched every way she could to find why do women's hormones do these weird and wonderful disruptive things in our life. And she couldn't find anything. So she trained as a therapist, and she got to witness many, many women in their late 40s and early 50s. She was still in her 20s and 30s, saying that they can't do things that they used to do. So this is where she realized this is where menopause is propelling us into the greatest stages of consciousness. And in ancient times, menopause was known as the goddess era because of the big energy of the wisdom and the vitality. A book that I love to share, and I can share this in our group, is Goddess and Older Woman by Jean Chenot de Bolin. And if you're looking for more kind of science-based, is Dr. Lara Brydon's Hormone Repair Manual. So it's a great combination of bridging the science and the magic. And once again, Lara's here in New Zealand. She's in Christchurch. So we're leading the way in a lot with our clinicians. So I talked about how back here I said our hormones do not create the problems, they reveal the problems, and we can't ignore them. And I just felt like this was my journey. I was asking the universe for help, and they were literally high-fiving me and letting me and letting me drown. So I just had continuous deaths and rebirths over the last 8 years that I've lost count. But now I see it. It was incredibly uncomfortable, and incredibly lonely at times, and this is why I just think it's so important that we create these spaces and that they're not just one-stop shop, and then we've got this information that we bring back the ancient wisdom of women's being in circles and sharing these stories. So literally, I felt like the universe was high-fiving me and then also kicking me in the womb multiple times. So the design of the woman's hormones is secondarily for making babies and primarily for making self. And that's certainly something that I've discovered through my journey of menopause. And the knowledge of this is meant to be shared over a lifetime, not just these one-off workshops. So in regular times. So I know, like when Jane Catherine came up last year, everyone was on a real high, and then we lose our momentum. So this is what I would love to see, and this is why I've put so much of my energy into Heart Place Hospital and caring for carers, so that we can create these priestess schools, these spaces that we can pause for menopause and all our other rites of passage. So I love this image. This is one from Jane Catherine's book. So there's 4 seasons in nature. There's 4 seasons in menstruation. There's 4 seasons in pregnancy. There's 4 seasons in perimenopause. And the metamorphosis of it, like a caterpillar, is from caterpillar to fat caterpillar to chrysalis to butterfly. So 4 is a really common number for us women in nature. So we start with menarche, and again, it's always related to the moon. So that's new beginnings. And then we go into our menstrual or motherhood years. And Bridget beautifully shared all about the 4 different seasons that we experience. And this was the archetype that I really did miss out on understanding and celebrating. And so that's why I had to spend a lot of my time going through it so that I could heal those boundary wounds. Now I know that I am the bridge between these 2 spaces. I've been in an era where it hasn't been spoken of, and now creating an era where it's more comfortable for us to speak to. And once again, it's the moons through those 4 phases. So woman in menstrual years so aligned to the moon. And perimenopause, rather than being in cycle, it's like literally being put into a blender and spun around, and we're very much in the spiral. So this is where the hot healed success express can happen in a millisecond, as opposed to very much moon cyclical. The advantage of this, though, is that we don't need to wait for that other half of the month where our energy is high and we've restored and released. We can actually access some of that real superpower ovulation energy where we can. And it's about exponential self-development here. So it supports us to be really inspirational, and to be able to really develop all our faculties all at the same time. Whereas through our menstrual years, it does come in seasons and cycles. Does mean that the other side of that is it does mean that you can also experience that hot mess and hot healed success really quickly. Part of our cycle is that when we're bleeding and before we're bleeding, we're very connected to spirit, to consciousness, to divine, to God, universe, source, whatever language you use. And that and because we're in that blender, in that spiral, in our menopause, we don't have to wait for that part of this part of our cycle. So we can actually get access to it at any time. So we can be all over the place, and learning to hold the whole lot at one time requires us to be quite multifaceted. So at menopause, our hormones are like custom officers at the border, and they're going to go right through your bags, even if you turn out saying, I've got nothing to clear, and they'll find anything that might limit or grieve or burden your life in the next chapter. Well, I must have a shit ton of luggage, because I had a lot of unlearning to do and a lot of remembering to do. And it's been quite the ride. So like I said, our hormones bring us more into consciousness, and it's about falling in love with all things feminine and all things nature. So coming back to nature. So it's about trying not to stay the same. And I like to think of the other archetypes. So going into our puberty years, we significantly physically and mentally and emotionally changed. When we went through our motherhood archetype, we've most definitely physically, mentally and emotionally changed. So the same goes with going through our menopausal years. I'm always really cautious when we hear words like restoring our hormones and rebalancing our hormones, because it's like it means that we're going back to where it was, whereas in menopause, we're actually going through a new transition, like the butterfly. And just like the butterfly, when we go into that chrysalis, we're in the goo on our own. And this is where bringing community in so that we can all hear each other while we're in that go. So really it's about getting curious. And why would our hormones do this to me? This is a question that I asked really regularly, because I'd had to do that real big dive into unlearning, remembering the archetypes. I couldn't understand, because I couldn't find anything to read or listen to. Why would these hormones do this to me? It seemed so disabling, and it seemed like things were really, really hard. And I know it takes courage, it takes testicles, and it really is not for the weak-spirited. But it opens doors to incredible adventures, and that's been the case for me. And I've recently done a podcast with Jane Catherine, and I remember saying to her, never in my wildest dreams 10 years ago would I think that I would be creating what I'm creating and stepping up into these spaces that I'm stepping up to, and sharing stories that people haven't shared for so long. So it's a big girl invitation into a whole new self expansion, and it's a system refiguration, and it's literally turbocharged. And it's like that, so it gets our attention. It disrupts the status quo in the way that we know to be. And that's definitely been the case for me. I have had not so much a physical transformation, experience the physical. I've experienced a lot of the emotional and a lot of the disrupting the system. And that looks like changing friendships and relationships. It's been a massive change for me, and I've had to sit in my magic and really ask the reasoning around that, because I really wanted to stay with the familiar. I was very resistant for a long time. I literally was like on the roller coaster, holding on like this, and it took me one finger at a time to actually really let go and surrender. And the beautiful thing is, and if you're still holding on really tight, the beautiful thing is that surrender takes less energy than it does to hold on. So the change really does require us to let go, and it can be really disconcerting, and we literally have to go through a gap. So a little bit like when we transition through birthing our children, they have to go through the birth canal, and the same with the chrysalis. It has to go through a transition to be that butterfly. Otherwise, good, diligent woman doing good for others, we just can't keep doing that. And menopause says no more. But it's asked in a beautiful tone of voice. And I remember when I first heard my whispers again, and it said care for carers, and it came in my voice. But although I was discombobulated and unwell, and feel like I was falling to bits, that voice was very reassuring and very calm and very curious. So I invite you to listen to that curious voice. Oh, look, once I reconnected with, because I did have a real connection with my spiritual side as a child, but it was very much medicalized, which we still see to today. So when it came back in that perimenopausal place, in 42, I was 42, and it's very common. I've heard lots and lots of people, not just women, actually have that awakening at that 42 years old. So there were many times where I really wanted to stay in that metaphysical. I wanted to stay floating in the clouds, and it felt more at home. But I've been given this privilege of being in a human body, and part of that is those privileges is that we do have a choice, and so I had to make a choice to really honor and acknowledge and understand and celebrate that body and my mind. So I had to learn some really big things and take some really big changes for me to do that. So I'm here talking to you about the expressions of menopause. And so I'm going to share some of them, and I literally just got these off the website, off Google, but like I said, I when I hear them, and when I was invited to an innovative webinar not long ago, and I just thought, oh God, it's the same thing. It just sounds so awful. And I just kept thinking, God, if I was a dog, just put me down. And so I've really sat in my magic, and I've tapped into, and we've all got this, into my claircognizance, and I've asked, like, what does this mean? Like, what are you trying to tell me? And so I've connected in with some that I experience. So I get itchy ears. I have done for many years, and I know a lot of people experience ringing ears. And so I've sat in my magic, and the message that I've got is that it's to get our attention. And it's either to get our attention so that there's something that we shouldn't be listening to, or there's something that we should be listening to. Now, I've had lots of people say to me, okay, I've done that, but then there's no other message. And so, but we see the message in synchronicity. So we might see the message in a song, or we might see it in an Instagram post, or someone we haven't seen for a long time. They might contact us. And I know this morning I ran into Sarah, who's on this call, and just before she bumped into me, I was talking to someone, and I said to her, oh, you've got to meet this nurse I know called Sarah. And then Sarah walked into me. So that's how we know that these messages are coming through. I was very sober curious for the past 7 years, and it was my messages that were saying to stop drinking alcohol, and I found it really challenging. Again, I was gripping onto that roller coaster, and I thought, well, if I stop that, then I lose some relationships, and I found that really challenging. And then eventually I got to the point where I actually became totally sober, and now I don't even think about it. I did the same. Coffee, my whispers for about 2 years said stop coffee, and I just couldn't. And I accidentally gave up coffee, and it was so painful that I'll never go back. So these are the things that my whispers were telling me through my body. My awe-inspiring body was giving me these messages. Part of what I do to support my body is I use a lot of mushrooms, magnesium. I'm a big magnesium fan. I get early morning sunlight in my eyes. And Lara Bryden's messages around menopause, her 3 top messages are give up alcohol, magnesium, and early morning sunlight. Yeah, and no one ever warned me of the ways I was going to grow away from people pleasing and perfectionism and what it was going to do to the relationships that I had. So it was pretty massive. And no one ever warned me how I was actually going to find myself. And that's been pretty amazing. So just going from this list, I know like I experience probably about once a month, I experience foggy sight. So I'll walk on the beach with my husband and it'd be a bright blue sky day, but I see it's foggy. And I'll say to him, "Is it foggy to you?" And he goes, "No, it's not." And then literally by lunchtime, that fog is lifted and I just have this unbelievable clarity in my sight. And it's like I see color like I've never seen color before. And it's like I see movement like I've never seen movement before. And it's like I just experience, like I just see nature moving and performing like I've never seen it before. So each time that happens, it shifts and my clarity of sight improves. I've also round libido, and I know that Tarisha is going to share this more with us on Thursday around our desires and sexuality. But I know for me, I've been with my husband for 24 years, and I realized it wasn't low libido. I was actually quite bored. I was bored with the same. But I didn't know how to speak to it. And so I just started sending him videos. And that's how things change from me labeling myself as having low libido to actually not having a low libido. So these are the things I just want to share with you that maybe could be something that that you could be curious about in asking yourself. I know lots of people experience brain fog and memory loss. And what I love around that is that, and that's me, I have that. And I've always been excellent. Like I've never had to write things down or have a calendar or anything like that. But what it has done for me is it has brought me really, really, really into the present. So I'm not, my memories fading, and so I don't have to sit in the past, which of course can generate feelings of low mood when you ruminate on the past. So I just don't have that. I don't have that access to that. And then when we look at the future, I just sort of have this brain fog, and so I find myself in the present so much more. And that is where I can really connect in with my consciousness and in those whispers that really do support me and guide me. Weight gain, I know, is a really common one, and particularly around the tummy. And I've sat with my magic and I've asked that question, and the answer that I got there was it is a protection, because we haven't had this knowing of our cycles, that it is a form of protecting our creative space. So something that I've been doing, and this was just intuitive, is that I've been just actually doing I hula hoop and I skip. And then I also do, and I just intuit it, just do some exercises where I'm actually moving that part of my body from side to side and my hips, and really opening up and giving it some space. And I've just found that I've been able to maintain the area of that, that weight, or reduce that weight gain that has come in. Also, another thing that I feel, and you've brought it up, Bridget, too, is that our hormones actually live in our adipose tissue, so in our fat. And if you think about that whales and humans are the only ones that go through menopause, and the reason being is so that we're not busy creating new life, so that we can actually support our daughters as they go through their motherhood rite of passage. So that was something else that I felt like was also, if you think about menopause, it's very it's big energy, you know, with hot flushes and hot at night time and throwing off sheets and throwing off jackets and experiencing the hot flushes which come up and out of our body like this. It's big energy. And I can't even believe, I still like when I do have the hot flushes, I can't believe that much energy can actually come out of my body. And so we kind of need to be big to hold that energy. So they're the little things that I just help me navigate through these massive changes that are happening in our body. And this is where I talk about really embracing the aging process. And she's not on today, but she's going to watch on record, is Charlotte, who's a pleasure dresser. And I just think it's just really amazing. Like we can, even though we're flinging off clothes, we can start like really creating ways for us to feel like that inner goddess with adornments, with beautiful layers of clothing, and accessing these people who are doing these amazing offerings so that we can still feel like the goddess within us. So just some more something that I do is I did actually have a lot of joint pain, and I had a really sore left knee for a long time, and I actually got an earthing mat, and I'd ground a lot. So I probably spend the first 4 hours of the day in nature. So I go straight to the beach and I walk barefoot with the dogs. And not only is it that there's a lot of us that connect in, so there's a community, we're in nature, with the animals, which just adore being in nature, and then a community who are doing the same. And a lot of us swim each day as well in the ocean. So I know cold water is not for everybody, but salt water is for everybody. So if you can't get into the ocean, and hopefully you've got a bath, then obviously use salt in the bath. So such medicine. I mean, the studies that show that 600 times more dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin than cocaine and heroin, and you don't have the come down. So I literally can't believe that it's not a part of everybody's prescription that goes to a GP. It's definitely on every prescription at Heart Place Hospital. So I have an earthing mat, and I literally wear bare feet most of the time. And I'm in nature a lot. Something that I find, like I love, we've got a forest nearby, and I go into the forest, and this happened to me when I was a child. I would actually have the trees and mushrooms and everything would talk to me, and it was just like this. I'd get mocked for it, and it was a sort of running joke. And it's returned. So I go to the forest now, and like I literally hug those trees because I think, oh my God, they're me. Like, because I'm always like, next time I'm coming back as a tree. And I think, well, there's someone that said they're coming back as a tree, so I'm going to go and hug them. And I just the medicine that I get from that, there's just nothing else that I can compare it to. So totally recommend my earthing mat, totally recommend grounding plus. We're literally designed for joy and pleasure first, and then to do the purpose work. And the byproduct of the purpose work is that we receive energy so that we can keep doing the purpose work. So this is how we're actually designed. So literally I'm not going to teach you things that you don't know, but what I'm going to do is remind you, and it's going to really blow on a spark, which is what happened to me when I worked with people like Jane Catherine and many other of my magical mentors. So hormones bring us more into consciousness, and you just can't get away with it or override menopause. And we're just not going to stay the same. We can't hide it. We need to face it. It can be incredibly scary. That's why we need to create these communities. Will not let you go through the next phase of life without going through it. And it really is, for me, I'm now that recovering perfectionist. I'm the recovering people pleaser. I'm no longer as busy as I was. I don't drink alcohol. I don't run. I do dance. It takes absolute so much gutsy courage to do it. And like I said, surrender is far less energy than gripping on. So it's literally a disintegration, a dismantling, and we've got to trust while it's going on without knowing what is coming up next. And we've got to really dig deep, allowing something in life to come to an end. And a whole lot of trust when it looks like there's nothing to trust. Bear the unbearable and take phenomenal courage. So it's literally an ingenious part of self-development. And like I said, we just need to fall back in love with all things feminine and all things nature. And even if it's like, I think, you know, like I've pulled my cards and I've got my candle going and my adornments, but soft fabrics, these are all the things that really just bring us back in. So menopause is very much a yin energy, whereas coming from menstruation, it's very much a yang energy. So something like, I know that I'm one of them. I wake at night, but I just imagine, like, this, like, we've got the red tent, which is when we're going through our menstrual years, but the purple tent, and I just imagine all of us awake at night and just getting up to shenanigans and just having these most amazing conversations around our emotions and our spirituality and consciousness, and just how much fun it would be. And I just feel like something that's really happened to me through this phase is I feel cheeky and a bit naughty and a bit rebellious, and I love laughing, and I love dancing, and I love being creative, and I love being in nature, and I love others that love that too. So yeah. What else did I want to say? Oh, just some other things that I've done. So I'm actually standing in the physical Heart Place Hospital, which I've created. And something that I did on purpose was I put skylights into the physical hospital, because I want, when women come and stay or come to a workshop or come and stay, I want them to be able to see the stars and the moon, and because that's a beautiful thing about being awake at night time, is that there is just the stars and moons to communicate with. And it's really interesting, and I really invite you to be really curious about, like, there's no one to disturb us at night time. So isn't it interesting that we wake up at night time and we can talk to the stars and moon, and we can talk to I like this, our favorite self. You might call it your high self, but I heard that this week, the favorite self. So some of the things that I've done to really tap into my feminine is like I said, goddess dressing, is really tapping into my sacred sexuality. I've had yoni mapping. I've worked with naturopaths. I've done a lot of inner work. I've looked at my human design and gene keys. I work a lot with plants. I love garden. I love being in my garden and doing garden to table. And I love, love, love being in nature. I feel really connected to my innate nature. So, a friend of mine shared this with me yesterday, and I felt so seen. When they think your calmness is spiritual bypassing, but you've been through death and rebirth enough times to know the universe has got you. And I mean, there's a time and place for spiritual bypassing, and I had this experience last week where I was with a group of women, and they told me that they didn't believe me when I'd done my share, and it was really interesting. I was really curious that I didn't get a charge, or I didn't get activated, or I didn't get triggered from them not believing me. And I thought, wow, that's cool. So I just wanted to share that story with you, to say it is possible, that we can heal these boundary wounds, that we can learn to advocate for ourselves, and we can craft a life that totally best suits us. And we have to do it together as a revolution. The other side, I actually changed views, and I looked at that experience from their lens as well. And I thought, oh, actually, maybe, just maybe, I did spiritually bypass that share. And I thought, and they did actually pick up on me not speaking my truth. But I also thought, wow, how amazing is my awe-inspiring body that it didn't feel safe to be totally honest in that share. So I really wanted to share this story because I just think it's so important that women are supporting women, and women are looking at the lens from both angles, looking at the polarities of situations from both sides, because it can be we're all right, no one's wrong, and it can be that we've got a part in us that is protecting us, is protecting our heart so that we don't get hurt. Or it can be that there is a part of us that is showing up and going, wow, I've done massive healing. So I just want to share that it is possible, and to expect the unexpected, and to these magic and miracles. And just to end, the yellow brick road, talking about the yellow brick road as a symbol of the journey through menopause. So we started off with the Wizard of Oz. So the path, it might have twists and turns, but it's a path that leads to a new phase of life. In companionship, walking this path with others can provide support and make the journey less daunting. The destination, just as Dorothy's journey ends at home, the journey through menopause can lead to a new sense of self and liberation. Just as Dorothy discovered that she had the power to return to home all along, each of us has the strength and wisdom to navigate the changes of menopause by following our own yellow brick road. So my challenge to everybody is to find a piece of information that resonates from the past 2 days and share it in the Magical Menopause private Facebook group. And the discussion, create a discussion, how can this new information change the perception of menopause being more magical? So thank you, everybody. I'm just literally all over the place as Heart Place Hospital. I will do a call to action. I have got a big fundraiser coming up on the 9th of June for Heart Place Hospital New Zealand registered charity, which turned 1 last week. And we have, if anyone's in Northland area, we've got ecstatic dance this Friday. I'm speaking in person in Auckland on Thursday at the Dreamers Collective. And I'm also about to share another collaboration next week with Lisa Black on rebirthing business. So I'd love to be connected. Thank you so much. And I'll stop sharing and see if there's any questions. Does anyone want to say anything?
Thank you, Jacqui. Thank you. I love hearing the wisdom. Like I love the synchronicity of all of the connections that have happened, particularly for me in the last 6 months. It's wild and fucking wonderful. It's all just like divinely timed. I just put in the comments that your podcast and stuff as well, you could put that on your slide if you want.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I might highlight the ones that I think will be relevant to so I've got one that we talk about Inanna with a nurse, and I've got one with the nurse that has started Hecate as well, so I can share those ones in particular. Yeah,
and the one with
Jane Catherine.
Thank you.
Jane Catherine.
Yeah, brain farts, honestly.
Big fan. She's just she's my yin to my yang. Yeah.
For those that may not have listened to the one with Jane Cameron already, have a box of tissues. because it really hit home for me. Like I pulled over and just had a good cry listening to it, because I'm a mum of 2 girls, and that was what I was going to ask Jacqui. Like young children, as I'm kind of approaching this, they're not even quite at, you know, Felicity, possibly because she's 8, but I'm hoping that she's going to be like out the gate late, you know, not early like so many of our little people.
Yeah,
These-
I got them from 9 years old when we were doing period power. I shortened
Yeah.
it to period power in the end. This thing is that there's such big gaps in between when we have these discussions. And yeah, I mean, it's good to plant the seeds. I can certainly share some books that I used to share with that. And same with us, you know, with our motherhood and our menopausal archetypes. There's such big gaps. Like we need, you know, there's science to show that we only store 8% of what we hear in a session. So it's really important that there's regular
repetition and adding.
Yeah. And I, you know, like I've got lots of sisters that I have am witnessed by and circle with, and I absolutely wholeheartedly needed it to get through the hot mess express I've been on. Yeah,
because I guess my piece is like approaching perimenopause with beautiful girls that are approaching menarche, and it's like how navigating that, like
I think we've been really duped. Like I was, you know, don't get pregnant, and so then I got pregnant, and then I menopaused at the same time as my girls went through puberty. But there's a beautiful thing in that too, and there's lots of, you know, compassionate conversations you can have with your daughters. You know, hey, I've never done this before. I don't have a rule book.
Totally.
You know, we're doing this together.
Yeah.
Let's see what sort of hot mess express we can ride together. So I've told that line to my girls so many times. I'm like, I've never done this before. This is like a parenting hack that I don't even know.
Oh yeah, I hacked my parenting like.
But just have trust and faith that you have this innate wisdom. And I think now we've got more and more doulas, stewards, guides, that it's going to be so much easier. And that's why I just couldn't not do this. And I remember literally like 10 months ago, I was saying, I can't do it. And then my guide said to me, okay, don't do it. And then I was like, what? I'm doing it. So,
like, don't tell me not to.
Literally do not tell me not to do it. And we all have choice. You know, we can say no. But I couldn't say no.
No. The parenting hack one, like going, I've never done this before, is actually quite powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else about the other thing I do with my girls all the time is, how can I help you? What can I do to support you?
Yeah.
So that they'll share something with me and I go, that sounds really tough. How can I help you right now? Because I actually have no fucking idea what to do. That's actually the answer. And so I just say it all the time, and I'm giving the onus back on them, because they're sovereign. They're sovereign. Oh my gosh, have I raised sovereign, independent beings? Yeah, we have broken the mold. We've gone against the status quo, and it's fucking hard. It's really
fucking potent, man. Holy.
So we have family members that don't speak to us because we've chosen to earth shake and change make and chain break, and yeah, my friendship groups have changed exponentially. But when I sit, it's so amazing. This magic is so like, I sit with my magic and I go, why did you take my friends away? And they say, because you were giving them too much. You were busy supporting them when you've got big things to do. And I'd be like, oh, that kind of makes sense. That's cool. Okay.
boundary lessons, eh?
And I would have, and so I stopped hearing from them when I needed them the most. But it was because I was really good at staying connected. That's not their ticket to ride. So yeah, it's a ride. But it's magical. I think it's magical, and I just really hope that I have shone a light and been a beacon of hope and been a light at the top of the lighthouse, that we can actually heal these boundary wounds. So I look back now, I can tell my entire story and put no meaning into it. I put no meaning into it, and it's been my yellow brick road to where I am now. And I, like I said, I needed to experience both worlds. Because I still speak to both worlds. I speak to very metaphysical people, but then I also speak to very corporate people. So yeah, and that is why the grounding is so important. That is why the nature is so important. And that is why finding your healing round table for now and moving it, like changing it, as you shift and change. And yeah, just interesting right now, mine is full of men. So
yeah.
But and I believe that those of us who have portaled daughters into the world at this time, that it's for us to show up and show up in our hot mess and our hot healed success, and just own it, and don't take other women down. Like I was showing you before in that scenario I had last week, I can see both lenses now, and I'm just freaking wrapped with how my body responded, but full compassion for how they were seeing it too. So
the balance, like that's where we sit, and our magic is to just be able to sit, kind of observe both, and just hold both.
And it won't stop. I've popped. It will never fucking stop.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you so much, Jacqui. Has anybody else got any questions or comments, or did it bring up anything for anybody? Anybody else? We're all on this journey. Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Turn it up a little bit, Donna.
Just me up.
Yes.
Amazing hearing more of your story, and I definitely learned lots.
Oh,
And I look forward to seeing you on Friday.
yeah. And you've portaled the boys in, Donna, so do your good work too.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy day.
Bye-bye.
Amazing.
Thanks.
Would you like to stop recording?
Okay.